Policy Council's Candidate Forum for Kansas Senate District 37. Today's forum is co-hosted by the Gardner-Edgerton Chamber and the Spring Hill Chamber. Joining me are Molly Baumgardner, the incumbent and Republican candidate, and Becca Peck, the Democratic candidate. The Johnson County Public Policy Council, comprised of the 10 chambers of commerce serving Johnson County, developed today's questions focusing on business and community issues. We will start with brief opening statements, followed by question and answer. At the conclusion of the forum, each candidate will have time to make a closing statement. We will not have questions from the audience. We will alternate which candidate answers first. Before we went live, we conducted a coin toss to see who would start. I'll ask Ms. Baumgardner to start with her opening statement.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to start by saying thank you to the Johnson County Chambers of Commerce for hosting this opportunity. I think those of you that know me know that communication and transparency, I think, are very important. And so I appreciate this opportunity for those in the community to know a little bit more about the candidates that they'll be voting for. I am Molly Baumgardner. I live in Lewisburg, Kansas. My family has lived in Lewisburg. We moved here shortly after I started teaching at Lewisburg High School. But I did grow up, as did my husband, in Olathe when we were married. We moved to Shawnee, so I have more than 40 years of living in Johnson County and quite a bit of time here in Miami County as well, which is important because that is the makeup of Senate District 37. And I've had the privilege to serve as senator for Senate District 37 for 6 years. And it has been a true honor to serve the constituents, not only of the district, but of the state. In the Senate, I serve as chair of the Senate Education Committee. I have had that position for 4 years. I also have served on the Taxation Committee, Health and Human Services, the Judiciary Committee, and Commerce. I'm right now co-chair of or vice chair of the joint interim Foster Care Oversight Committee, and I have served as the chair and the vice chair for the Corrections and Juvenile Justice Committee. What I have always tried to do as senator is to work to solve problems for Kansans. And I have done that by working not only within my committee, not only within my party, but working with all of the senators, Republican, Independent, as well as Democrat. And many of the bills that I have championed, including some foster care bills, the school funding bill, I've done so with the support of both sides of the aisle. So I'm going to stop now, and I know that my opponent will be speaking, and then we'll hit the questions.
Thank you, Ms. Baumgardner. Now let me turn to Ms. Peck for her opening statement.
Hello. Thank you to the Chambers for hosting this event, and for the team from the Chambers that are here with us today. Hi, I'm Becca Peck. I've lived in Kansas for 30 years and 20 years in this district with my husband, Kevin, and our 2 adult sons. With a degree in computer science, I worked in technology for 10 years. My youngest son's severe disabilities with an unknown future propelled me to advocate for his best life. My full-time job was as my son's case manager and his account manager, navigating legal, financial, healthcare, insurance, and education policy. Today, he lives in a group home where he walks, talks, and loves math. Service is in my blood. Having worked for 20 years as a community leader, including as assistant scoutmaster and board member for various local and state organizations, I had the financial acuity of working with budgets. It is in this spirit of service that I am running for office to advocate for Kansas. I will vote for Medicaid expansion. Let's bring our federal tax dollars home to provide medical and mental health services, keep our community healthy, strengthen our workforce, preserve our hospitals, and grow the economy. I support fully funding public schools. We need to make public education a priority to meet each child's needs and safely return to the classrooms. We need to restore our economy, refinance our debt, create jobs in new industries, improve our infrastructure, install broadband as a utility that is critical to a competitive economy, accessing healthcare and public education. I spent 20 years successfully advocating for my family and others. Now I ask you to elect Becca Peck. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peck. We'll now proceed with our question and answer session, and the first question is directed toward Ms. Peck. As a candidate, what are your top 3 policy issues?
Thank you. My top 3 policy issues are passing Medicaid expansion, K-12 public education funding, and responsible economic restoration. Our economy can get back on track with new jobs in new and emerging industries. We need to focus our economic recovery on infrastructure projects that put people back to work, including building critical transportation needs, our state's computer system and broadband that help make our state competitive. We need to bring our federal tax dollars home to Kansas for Medicaid expansion. We must prioritize public education to meet each child's needs and for everyone to safely return to the classroom. To summarize, my top 3 issues are Medicaid expansion, public education, and responsible economic restoration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peck. Senator Baumgardner, what are your top 3 policy issues?
Well, I'm going to tell you that having served on Commerce Committee, one of the things that we knew from last session was that we had all of these open jobs and we didn't have qualified folks to be employed in them. So jobs is job 1 for the legislature. We need to get some energy and robust efforts for our economy. And that's going to include job creation, but also a very crucial job training. So we're going to need to focus on that. We're going to have to get to work on the budget because we know that we are facing a shortfall and there were very modest cuts that were made at the beginning of the fiscal year in July. So when the legislature gets back, we will be in the 7th month of the fiscal year. And so we will have to address the budgetary issues. But while we're doing that, we have to make sure that we do not cut the highway program because highway expansion on 69 highway and 68 highway means job creation for us in our local areas. We also need to make sure that we protect the funding that I was proud to negotiate for our K through 12 schools. The Supreme Court did 2 years ago rule that we did meet the adequacy mandate that they had, and we need to make sure that we don't undercut that. The last thing I'm going to be working on is reform for foster care, because quite frankly, we're talking about 7,000 to 8,000 students that are being underserved. They are wards of the state and they're being underserved by our state. Thank you.
Senator Baumgardner, the next question goes to you first. How would you propose to balance the state budget? What specific budget cuts would you support? And what revenue enhancements would you consider, if any?
Well, one of the things that I think that we have to do is we need to see where we are from a fiscal standpoint when we are there in January. And I know that the Finance Council is meeting on a regular basis. I know that Senate Ways and Means is meeting on a regular basis. But the Senate, the body of a whole, needs to see that budget, and we need to see really how far off we are with revenue streams. We had a little bit of a surprise this last month that it was looking fairly stronger than anticipated. And so one of the things that we do need to look at definitely with regard to revenue is where we are with online purchases. And I was a part of a group that did support that we address the taxation with regard to online purchases. That still hasn't happened yet, but since we have had a Supreme Court ruling on that, we need to address that issue. With regard to cuts, areas absolutely that need to be protected include our schools. They include our KDOT. We need to make sure that KDOT as well as CAPERS are not swept from, because to try and catch back up on that will be very devastating and very expensive for the state. And what we need to look at is what kind of freezes and what kind of cuts can be made that are not impacting the vital services to the members of our community. And we can do that. We can close some offices that are out of state, and we can take advantage of the economy of less spending on transportation that has occurred in our state.
Ms. Peck, how would you propose to balance the state budget? What specific budget cuts would you support, and what revenue enhancements would you consider, if any?
Thank you. I propose balancing the budget by taking advantage of our credit rating to ensure that we have the best interest rates in order to refinance our debts and liabilities like CAPERS. Further, we need to approve new revenue streams such as medicinal cannabis and internet sales. We need to continue to install broadband, which will help make the state competitive, as well as provide access to health care and public education. We must expand Medicaid, which will bring back billions of federal dollars to Kansas for medical and mental health services and grow the economy. I would prioritize the funding of K-12, public education, and infrastructure projects. Our roads and bridges are failing. Gardner roads are atrocious. We need to help them. Our computer systems are 40 years old. Finally, I support cutting taxes on food and essential items. What we don't want to do is go back to the Brownback era that produced disastrous results for our public schools and our economy. Thank you.
Ms. Peck, the next question is directed to you. What would you do to grow and develop the state's workforce?
Thank you. We need a collaborative effort between the state and major stakeholders, such as educational institutions, chambers, businesses, to develop the state's workforce. It starts with education, whether it's K-12, trade schools, community college, or four-year college programs. Technology is here to stay, and we need to make STEM education a priority. Just like we have a scholarship program for doctors and teachers, we must include scholarship programs for those hard-to-fill jobs. We also need to take into consideration the loss of jobs to automation and artificial intelligence. Workers need new skill sets for data analysis and machine learning, which goes back to STEM education. What's also missing is our soft skill set, especially in the areas of listening, empathy, conflict resolution, teamwork, and critical thinking. Our career placement assistant efforts should include helping workers learn new skills and applying for a job online, especially if they don't have good internet connection. Our young people are leaving the state in search of good, long-term paying jobs, affordable housing, diversity, environmental sustainability, childcare, and health insurance. We need to work together to solve these issues. Thank you.
Senator Baumgardner, the same question comes to you. What would you do to grow and develop the state's workforce?
Thank you for that question, because it happens to be an area that I'm very committed to. I think many of you know that I served as a trustee for Johnson County Community College for 18 years. And one of the things that was continues to be so important about Johnson County Community College is that partnership that it has with business and industry. What I have advocated for, and what is law now, is that all high school kids, when they are juniors, can take the ACT
I'm assuming we have frozen, everybody else is frozen with the senator.
Yes.
All right. We will wait just a second until hopefully the broadband comes back online here.
Are you able to hear me now?
I am able to hear you. I cannot. There we go. Now I can see you. So, so when the
Sorry.
broadband left us, the question was, what would you do to grow and develop the state's workforce?
Okay. Sorry, rural Wi-Fi is a little sketchy at times. I think many of you know that I served for 18 years at Johnson County Community College as a trustee. And one of
We will continue to wait just a moment until the broadband pops up again. All right, Molly, or Senator, are you back?
I'm back.
All right.
I apologize.
Not a problem. We will go back to that question as to growing and developing the state's workforce.
I think many of you know that I served on the Board of Trustees at Johnson County Community College for 18 years. And one of the things that makes that college so important is that connectivity that they have with the workforce. And so that's something that certainly I've always been involved in and been an advocate for. So one of the ways that we are in our state working to improve that workforce readiness is every high school student that's a junior can take the ACT for free, as well as the ACT work keys. And the work keys is so crucial for kids that want a career technical future, because if they earn level 4 or level 5, that gives them, that demonstrates that they have that foundation or background that they need for 95% of the jobs that are available in our state. And the interesting thing is just this last year, we had nearly 18,000 high school kids take that work keys test. So I think that's important. But the other thing that we need to do is continue to make sure that within our state, we have partnerships. Johnson County Community College just partnered with KU Edwards campus, and they are offering for anyone that has been displaced from a job due to COVID, the opportunity to take courses right now, this semester, for free. And if they go to the website, they can get that information and get started on those certificate programs. So we need to be working in concert with businesses and make sure that we have training available for those that are needing it. You know, one of the interesting things is we know that not everyone within the state knows what opportunities are available to them. And that's why I work so hard for a program that would have allowed any individual that was underemployed or unemployed to be able to go to college for 2 years and earn either an associate's degree or a certificate degree if they were entering into a career or technology program. And that was good for any community college any technical college or any universities. Unfortunately, that bill was vetoed by the governor, but I think that we will be addressing that as soon as we get back. I'm going to stop. I can't see any of the images, so I'm not sure where we are on time, but I'm going to stop there.
All right. Senator Baumgardner, the next question comes to you again. And what are your views on K-12 public education funding?
Well, K through 12 public education funding is something that I have spent a lot of time with, the last 4 years with it particularly. And, you know, it was out of my committee that the bill that was passed by the Senate as well as the House was signed by the governor, then went to the Supreme Court. You know, it took 3 days of negotiating with the House, and I was very proud to be the lead negotiator.
Looks like we are having challenges with the bandwidth again.
I'm back.
All right, you were answering the question on school funding at the time we broke up.
Okay, so I did have the privilege of negotiating. On the Senate side, I had the majority leader as well as the minority leader were negotiating with us, and it was important that the Supreme Court did rule that we met the adequacy funding. And so we are now in our second year of that funding formula. So you can imagine that we need to make sure that none of that funding is compromised when we're working on the budget when we return in January. There are some areas that need attention. We know that. There was a bill that my committee worked, it got out of committee, and it has to do with the at-risk school funding, because there was research that was done and an audit was performed on school districts and how they were using that at-risk money. And one of the things in our 6 days of hearings that we learned is that school districts said, you know, what doesn't seem right is we're unable to use at-risk funding for training for our employees. And we really are working to make sure, in particular, that the training occurs for faculty for dyslexia. And what we know from research is roughly 5 to 15% of our kids do have dyslexia, and that creates difficulty with that cognitive reading. And we don't have teachers that have been trained appropriately. So in that piece of legislation, we intend for school districts to be able to use that at-risk funding so that they can have their teachers, those frontline educators, trained as they need to for dyslexia, for reading, for any other types of disability training that they might need. So we'll continue to work on that. But again, it is not to cut money. It is to help school districts so that they can serve the needs of our students. So always working to make sure that that funding is getting in the classroom, because that's really where the rubber hits the road. And having been a fourth generation educator in my family, it's important that our teachers, our paras, and all of the other support staff, including our counselors, our social workers, that they have the funding, but also that they have the supplies and the different training that they need to do their jobs.
Ms. Peck, what are your views on K-12 public education funding?
Thank you. We must follow the requirements outlined in the state's constitution concerning equitable and adequate funding for public schools. Education is the backbone and foundation for tomorrow's workforce and a growing economy. Businesses and families look at school districts when relocating to our Kansas communities. Providing all schools with funding benefits each child, no matter their zip code. Our highly qualified teachers are leaving the state. Kansas ranks 36th in teacher pay. Class sizes are too big Teachers have to buy their own supplies for their classrooms. Teachers lost their due process rights, which hinders recruiting. Our CAPERS retirees have not received a cost of living allowance in 22 years. Yet those retirees contribute to the local economies statewide. In light of these issues, children, teacher, and staff are returning to the classrooms. School districts have to implement new procedures and policies to deal with COVID-19. Statewide broadband ensures each child has an opportunity to receive quality public education. I am the only candidate in this race to be recommended by KNEA, Stand Up Blue Valley, and Game On for Kansas. Thank you.
Ms. Peck, the next question comes to you. What types of economic development policies will you support to encourage job growth and business expansion in Kansas?
Thank you. I'm really happy to see the reemergence of the Department of Commerce that will help sell our state to businesses. I also support the use of STAR bonds and what makes sense for each project. I support economic policies that keep our young people in Kansas. Our young people are leaving the state for greener pastures, high-paying jobs, affordable housing, environmental sustainability, and low-cost childcare. I support economic policies that capitalize on wind energy. We are the second highest windiest state in the nation. Cannabis, medical cannabis, and expanding the hemp industry. I'd also like to see us consider high-speed transportation systems connecting our largest metropolitan areas. I'm pleased to see the formation of the Office of Broadband Development that will help bridge the digital divide for our rural communities and create jobs. Whatever we do, we must make sure our economic policies are linked to the value we place on our public education and transportation systems. Thank you.
Senator Baumgardner, the same question comes to you. What types of economic development policies will you support to encourage job growth and business expansion in Kansas?
Thank you. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
One of the things that I have worked with is that the high schools are working with the community colleges, are working with the universities. And what we don't want to see is that students take courses and then they have to retake them once they get
We've once again had a broadband issue, and we'll hold on for just a moment.
I think I'm back.
I think you're back.
Okay. So we need to make sure that we have a work-ready group of either individuals that have earned certificates or have earned degrees. We also need to focus on, and you know, that's one of the benefits of the Promise Act that
Apologize to the viewers for the technical glitches here. Hopefully we'll be back on.
I'm back.
All right.
It is possible, Senator, if you turn off your video, while it's not ideal, that may help with your bandwidth issue a tad. That's your call.
It's off. So we'll try again.
All right.
So one of the benefits of the Promise Act is I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. The benefits of the Promise Act is it focused on providing funding for those top 5 areas that were needed as far as career areas that were needed by that region of the state. as well as 5 areas that were needed statewide. So obviously,
Once again, we've lost the senator and apologize to the viewers, but we'll wait till she comes back.
I'm back.
All right.
Obviously, healthcare, social workers, and those high demand jobs were those areas that were included with the Promise Act. And when you have a trained and work-ready group of employees, that's what brings businesses to the state, and that's what keeps businesses in the state. Now, my opponent mentioned being supportive of STAR bonds. I have not supported STAR bonds in the past, and I can say that we will not continue to have STAR bonds because those have sunsetted. And the problem with STAR bonds is we had developers that were only developing projects, recreational projects, that didn't bring in the audience or didn't bring in folks traveling from throughout the state or out of state, which is what they were originally designed for. Instead, they were used to fund strip malls and restaurants, and didn't generate the tax incentive that was necessary to pay off those bonds. And several of those unsuccessful STAR bond projects, unfortunately, have been in Johnson County. So I don't think that's the way to attract. I think the way to attract business and promote commerce is to have that high-speed internet, to have safe highways so that the intermodal traffic continues to grow and be strong, but also to make sure that we have that work-ready group of employees.
Senator Baumgardner, the next question goes to you, and that is, what are your views on state tax policy, being as specific as you can?
I will be specific about state tax policy because there was a tax bill that passed both the House and the Senate, very strong tax bill that was a transparency bill. And we thought it was important for people so that they could understand what taxes were being increased at the state level, but more importantly, what taxes were being increased at the local level. Now, the governor did veto that bill. I think that's unfortunate because we do know that most folks in Johnson and Miami County and throughout the state have a mortgage and aren't aware necessarily of what they're paying for taxes. And so we felt that that transparency bill was very important for folks. Also, another component of that tax bill was that your taxes wouldn't go up if you made changes to your home, such as repairing the roof, repairing a broken porch or patio, things that in the past had not had caused people's taxes to go up. Now, one area of tax that I am very adamant needs to occur is that we need to work to ratchet down the food tax, because what we know is our most vulnerable families, food is a basic need, and they are being taxed out. They're taxed even when they went to the farmer's market and bought fresh produce that was locally raised. But we do have to work to get that food tax down until we get it to zero. Do I think we should in one fell swoop just wipe it out? I don't think that that would be appropriate, but I do think we need to work to step it down gradually, incrementally, and I would be in favor of 2% per year to just keep working to move that down. I would not support a tax increase at this time because right now I think that would be too harmful and too hurtful for Kansas families.
Ms. Peck, what are your views on state tax policy, being as specific as you can?
Currently, the state's tax revenues are out of balance, relying heavily on high sales and property taxes. State taxing policies should be a balanced approach where each taxing revenue is equally important to the other. We've seen what happens in recession or the results of a massive tax cut. Revenues drop and critical government services such as our infrastructure are affected. We need to eliminate the sales tax on meat and produce that impacts everyone. Lower food taxes means families will have more discretionary income to purchase other items and services. We need to evaluate our existing tax brackets. Currently, a family of 5 earning about $31,000 a year would be considered at the poverty level. Yet, they are in the highest income tax bracket. Our most vulnerable income earners are being taxed at the highest levels, not only on their income, but also at the grocery store. We need to change our taxing structures. Thank you.
Ms. Peck, the next question comes to you. What are your views on healthcare policy and Medicaid expansion?
I support Medicaid expansion. To date, Kansas left $4.1 billion on the table in federal money by not expanding Medicaid. Those who lost jobs and insurance due to COVID joined the 150,000 residents who would also benefit from Medicaid expansion. The incumbent had 6 years of blown opportunities to vote for medical expansion and failed to get it done. Our family lives in rural Kansas, where many hospitals have been reduced to freestanding emergency rooms. 2 of my family members recently contracted COVID-19 and were transported by a ground ambulance more than 2 hours away, as nearby hospitals were either full or closed. With Medicaid expansion, their hospitals may have remained open. Our rural communities are dying as a result of hospital closures. We need to get out of the mindset of expecting our hospitals to be profit-generating ventures. Instead, we should consider them to be like public safety resources, which are not operated on a for-profit business model. Expanding Medicaid keeps our communities healthy, strengthens our workforce, preserves our hospitals, and grows the economy.
Senator Baumgardner, the same question. What are your views on healthcare policy and Medicaid expansion?
I'm going to start by saying that unfortunately, it wasn't until this last legislative year that we got actual, honest, factual information from our healthcare providers and from our hospitals with regard to the issue of Medicaid expansion. And what we learned through that process of the interim joint committee and during our hearings during the legislative session is that the situation was not at all how the Hospital Association had portrayed it in years prior. The fact of the matter is, whether or not we have expansion in our state, that would not have saved any of the rural hospitals that closed, nor will it expand to provide, or would it allow hospitals to expand services such as my opponent has addressed. She made reference to 2 family members being driven by ambulance to a hospital 2 hours away. That was not because the hospital that they might have passed was full, because the fact of the matter is we do not have hospitals in our state at this time that are full. What we do have is 25% of our rural hospitals have a daily census of 3, 2, 1, or 0 patients. We have 85% of our hospitals in this state that operate at a loss. And we have what the Hospital Association shared with us, outward migration where folks don't choose to go to their local hospital, their community or county hospital, but instead they go elsewhere. And that's true in my county, in Miami County. We have a local hospital in Paola, but folks go to Johnson County for their services. And the number one driving factor is because OBGYN, labor and delivery services, are not in this rural hospital. In fact, we don't have labor and delivery services in Anderson County, Lynn County, any of those counties further south of Miami County. So the hospitals know that that's the number one driving factor. So what I did to try and address that issue so that we would have more OBGYNs in the rural setting is I introduced a bill whereby someone going to KU Medical Center, getting that training to be an OBGYN, that they would have that tuition forgiveness if they located in a rural hospital. Now, that bill it passed out of committee. It did not pass in the Senate, but I think that's one of the things that we need to work toward. We also need to look at what it is right now we can do to reduce the wait list for folks that already have Medicaid. And right now, the wait list is way too high. And the reason is because healthcare providers are not required. They're not mandated to take a Medicaid patient. In fact, one of our hospitals in Johnson County only 3% of their patients are Medicaid patients because they just don't have healthcare providers that will take Medicaid patients. So we need to work on building that structure and that payment plan for Medicaid providers so that we'll have more providers willing to serve those in need. And right now, we just don't have that in our state.
Senator Baumgardner, you have the next question. What do you believe most distinguishes you from your opponent in this race? Did you hear that? Senator, okay. Senator Baumgardner, what do you believe most distinguishes you from your opponent in this race?
Well, I'd have to say that what most distinguishes me is my body of work. I think folks that have followed my work since I've been in the Capitol know that for 12 years, families came to the legislature and wanted resolution with restraint and seclusion for kids that had special needs. And that was something that I accomplished my first year there, is getting that bill passed. Another thing that we had a problem with, it was my understanding that it had been introduced for more than 10 years, and that was the wrongful conviction, no restitution for wrongful conviction. So I introduced that bill, I worked that bill hard, and it is now considered the gold standard, not in our state, not in the Midwest, but throughout the United States. And accomplish that with very strong bipartisan support because I worked with everyone on the committee. And so I think what folks will recognize from my work as a state senator is I'm willing to work with any group on any issue to come to a solution that helps and serves Kansas families.
Ms. Peck, what do you believe most distinguishes you from your opponent in this race? I believe you're muted.
Apologies. Okay. I noticed my opponent did not have her Facebook website or Twitter updated until May of 2020. They were all 5 years stale. 5 years. Above and beyond the last election, they weren't even updated. Interestingly enough, her talking points mirror mine, which have been in the public arena for 4 months by the time she got her website up. It just shows you how out of touch she is with her constituents. I will be an independent decision maker and work on bipartisan common sense solutions. I have decades-long friendships with people from all political affiliations. We have those difficult conversations on public policy and do it respectfully. When my calls and emails to the incumbent went unanswered early on in 2017, I took my son with disabilities to Topeka so she could see who her votes impacted. Although she listened to my story, I felt she dismissed my concerns, much the same as she dismissed my conversation recently about COVID. She was not on the calls with us when we were told that those COVID patients were not allowed to go to Salina or any of the other surrounding hospitals, but had to go all the way towards the south of the state. It appears this is a pattern that I've heard from other constituents that is an issue with this incumbent. I will listen to and respond to all my constituents, including hosting town halls. I will support Medicaid expansion, foster care, and public school funding. Kansans deserve an advocate they can count, listen to them, and respond to them. I am that advocate. Thank you.
And this will be the last question before we go to closings, and it starts with Ms. Peck. The pandemic has hit many Kansans and many Kansas businesses very hard. What should be the role of the state legislature in dealing with this pandemic?
Thank you. You know, people have lost confidence in our institutions. People are exhausted and unsure of the future with respect to our economy, our health, our public education, and our government. We need strong leadership, not political bickering. We need to work together to find bipartisan common sense solutions. We need to understand and follow the science and listen to the advice of medical experts. We need to collaborate with businesses and nonprofits to develop and manufacture testing, contact tracing, and PPE. We must pass Medicaid expansion. We must continue to lobby our congressional delegation and the president for federal funding for the HEROES Act. We need to protect our landlords and lenders, as well as establish a moratorium on evictions and closures. We need to maintain unemployment benefits. We need to establish a local task force to evaluate and prepare for the long-term benefits of COVID-19. COVID-19 is the new normal for the foreseeable future. We must continue to practice social distancing, wear a mask, and wash our hands. By doing our part, we protect ourselves and our loved ones. Thank you.
Senator Baumgardner, the pandemic has hit many Kansans and many Kansas businesses very hard. What should be the role of the state legislature in dealing with this pandemic?
Thank you for that question. The pandemic has hit everyone hard, but I have to tell you that quite frankly, it has been disappointing, and some of the problems have been exacerbated by the lack of leadership coming from the Department of Health. Back in March, Secretary Norman knew that the most likely location, the most at-risk population would be the elderly that were in long-term or retirement homes. And training was not done for infection control for the employees in these homes. And that's why we saw such a tremendous spike and so many lost lives. That continues to be the most common group of individuals that do lose their lives in the state of Kansas to COVID. It wasn't until the 30th of July that the infection control training occurred in all of the long-term care facilities, and that was only because it was mandated at the federal level. So we need to make sure that we have assurances that the Department of Health is providing consistent leadership throughout the state. We know that isn't occurring right now with regard to contact tracing. And we heard from the secretary that he wasn't that in favor of being responsible for that, but he does oversee all of the different health directors for each county. And it's important that contact tracing is executed appropriately and with the level of privacy that is necessary for handling that type of sensitive information. What I have dealt most with is the concerns that others have that have been laid off, been furloughed, lost their jobs, that they haven't received that unemployment. They're still waiting for the Department of Labor. So we do need to address what has and hasn't been done by our different agencies, and we're going to need to work to make sure that they have what's necessary for them to be successful, because Kansas families are counting on that.
We will now wrap up today's forum with closing statements. Ms. Peck, we will start with you.
Thank you again to the chambers, to our moderator, Tony, and to our viewing audience. I spent 20 years successfully advocating for my family and others. The incumbent had 6 years to pass Medicaid expansion legislation and failed every time. Recently, my opponent returned to Topeka twice in the midst of this pandemic, but did not prioritize Medicaid expansion for those who lost their jobs and their health insurance. I've heard from voters who are frustrated with political posturing instead of finding bipartisan common sense solution. The incumbent failed to fully fund our public schools. I'm the only candidate in this race to be recommended by KNEA, Stand Up Blue Valley, and Game On for Kansas. When my opponent failed to pass Medicaid expansion for 6 years, she failed to prioritize mental health services, although she puts that up and says that's one of her big items she's addressing. She failed to prioritize our infrastructure to make Highway 68 safer. She failed to get broadband installed across the state and to upgrade the state's 40-year-old Department of Labor computer system. I remember going to college 40 years ago. Those computers were incredibly slow. She sponsored a bill for foster care, then voted against it. She repeatedly votes against school funding. Advocating for my son with disabilities, I had to know the statutory requirements and restrictions associated with public education, healthcare, medical billing, and finance and insurance. You can judge my experience and job performance by how well my son is doing today. I will bring the same experience and performance to listen and respond to all my constituents, even those that don't vote for me. Advocate for every person in this district and find common sense solutions and build a spirit of bipartisanship for everyone. I will vote to responsibly restore the economy, expand Medicaid, and fully fund our public schools. The time is now for new leadership to advocate for you in Topeka. November 3rd, vote Becca Peck. Thank you.
And now, Ms. Baumgardner, 2 minutes to give your closing.
Thank you very much. Again, to all of the chambers for sponsoring this opportunity. As I said in my introduction, it has been an honor to serve the constituents of the 37th Senate District. I came into the position as an educator, and education has always been my focus, and it's been a privilege to serve as chair of the Senate Education Committee for 4 years. Funding their schools has been a struggle for many years for this state. The state's been under litigation for more than a decade, and it was a privilege to negotiate the funding formula that for the first time the Supreme Court viewed as adequate. It came out of my committee. It was a bill that I introduced. It is the bill that I negotiated with the House, and it is the bill that the governor signed. Healthcare particularly mental health care, has been a priority of mine because a portion of the district is in Osawatomie. And it wasn't long after I became a senator that they shut down a portion of the Adair building. And it's been a very strong, difficult struggle for this state, for those that have crucial, severe mental health problems. So what did I do when I was a new senator is I hosted not one, not two, but 3 different town halls and had the Secretary of KDADS come and answer those questions from family members, from employees, from community members. To this day, we still do not have a governor that has opened up, even with all of the millions of dollars that were redirected to Osawatomie State Hospital, all of the renovations that were made to make it safe. We still do not have a governor that will open up those empty beds, and we need that. It was an honor to testify with the task force that traveled around the state for highway expansion to share the need, the dire need to expand Highway 68, which at that time had a fatality accident every month for 4 months in a row, and to advocate for the work to expand on 69 Highway.
And Senator, we're
bill-
past the 2 minutes. If you could wrap it up here, that'd be great.
Okay. That bill was signed into law. I have always voted and supported those issues that are going to improve the state. I can't answer the claims, the unfounded claims of my opponent, but I do ask, if you want someone that is going to make things happen, please vote Molly Baumgardner. Thank you very much.
This concludes today's forum for Kansas Senate District 37, featuring Molly Baumgardner and Becca Peck. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today and remind you that today's forum has been recorded and will be posted on the Policy Council's website, www.votejoco.com. Advanced voting by mail begins on October 14. Advanced in-person voting begins on October 19. Election Day is November 3rd. Thank you again for joining us. Thanks to our candidates, and have a great day.